Had to get rid of that glare. Okay, I don't know if it'll work or not. Okay. This is my. Okay, this is the next report on. I have one on Donald Trump. Stiers had made a comment in one of the debates how he said if we don't beat Trump on the economy, we're not going to win. I personally, support Sanders for a whole lot of reasons. Sanders, he's smarter than Trump. He seems to be quite a bit smarter. With everything I've seen, he has. Stiers has a real good platform too. But Stiers made the point that the Democrats aren't going to win. I mean, if the economy's in pretty good shape, it's been going up for a long time. But they actually say the job growth hadn't changed much since 2010, but it's been going a long time. The boom hasn't stopped. I don't know how long it went after the Great Depression. I think it went a long time that time too. Of course, that could have been FDR. He was a good president too. So Trump may have done a pretty good job, but I think how smart is he in the economy? And this is my attempt to outsmart him. The first thing I want to talk about though first was Buttigieg. Buttigieg got wiped. That's in the last in New Hampshire, and I'm going to talk about the main thing that's wrong with him. First of all, like I say, he was in the wine cave. He was in the wine cave with a bunch of multi-trillionaires. That's the first thing that's wrong. He's taking money from them, and like Sanders brought out, he's taking money from the pharmaceutical industry. What happens when you take money from the pharmaceutical industry? It means they're supporting the AMA and their corruption. They always use it in Biden. Every time I hear Biden comes out and he goes, that health, Medicare for all or whatever it was, single payer, whatever they call it. How are you going to pay for that? Well, I mean, you have to get the cost down. You got to stop the corruption in the government that drives the cost way out the roof. Is how you pay for it. You get the cost down. You stop the corruption. Even if you're not going to stop it, at least make some attempt to stop it. At least bring out to the public that it's corrupt. You don't just stand there. How are you going to pay for that? And Biden's an idiot. I get tired of hearing him, but anyway, Buttegieg has got the same problem. If he's taking money from the pharmaceutical industry, he's not going to do. What happens when you have a hospital merger? Everybody gets laid off. What happens when everybody gets laid off? You lose your tax base. There's no tax base. So what do you do? So what happens? You don't balance the budget. And the biggest thing I've noticed is the countries that don't finance the military have always had real strong economies, like the United Arab Emirates. They've got the tallest building in the world. Japan's always dominated the auto industry, but they said a lot of that had to do with the fact that we finance their military. That's why our businesses don't outdo them, or their production overall was higher. And I read that in political science, but I've never understood it exactly how it works that way. But if you don't get rid of the hospital mergers and get employees making more money, and there's more competition, they make more money. The hospital employees are making next to nothing right now. Working 60 hours a week, not making anything because of all the mergers. Well, if Buttigieg is taking money from the AMA, he's not going to fix that problem. So what happens? You don't have a tax base. The economy isn't strong. And so, like Sanders brought out, he's shallow. He's shallow and he's superficial, and he doesn't. And that usually, if someone doesn't have their heart and soul in a movement the way the Sanders supporters have, with the campaign finance corruption and wanting to stop it, then they tend to be shallow. They tend to be superficial, and they don't understand things really deep. And you have to be really deep to understand the Supreme Court and all that. Anyway, that's why I don't support Buttigieg. The other problem is he's always a swamp rat, essentially. He's a bit of the swamp in Wall Street, like they said. Okay, now Bloomberg has problems. The first thing is, the reason he's running, if you look and see why he's running, you can tell he's basically a swamper. Bloomberg, his first thing he did was, if you notice what he did, his reason for running was that one of the reasons had to do with the trade balance with China. Well, anyone knows the ratio of imports and exports is the best way you get wealth in a country and a strong economy. And so if China's taking advantage of us, we don't have a strong ratio of imports and exports. And you get it, but Buttigieg, that's hitting him in the wallet. So he wants to get in there and knock Trump off to stop the China thing, even though the China thing is in the public interest. But stopping the China trade deal and reversing it is in Bloomberg's interest to the detriment of everyone else. Okay, so the next thing, and the other thing that's wrong with him, is basically what we have is the same thing we had back in 1968, where you had the Viet Nam War. The biggest thing that's wrong with 1968, and the biggest thing that's wrong right now, there's a similarity. It was the Vietnam War back then. Well, what do you have? You had a Democrat that supported stopping the war. You had another one that wanted to keep it going. Well, it's just a killing machine. It wasn't doing any good. The Vietnam War did absolutely nothing. It had no purpose whatsoever. John F. Kennedy screwed up basically everything he did. He was a screw-up president. You're going to list all things he did wrong. The Caribbean Basin Initiative. He tried to kill Castro. That failed. He got himself shot. The Bay of Pigs fiasco. The Cuban Missile Crisis. He almost got us nuked. The Vietnam War. Everything he did was a failure. And so it was time to stop the war, obviously, and they weren't stopping it. Well, anyway, McCarthy actually won. It was like right now he had all the delegates, but the DNC didn't want him in. They didn't want the DNC to look bad over that war, and so they shoved Humphrey down everybody's throat, and no one wanted him. That's what the Chicago riots were over. We got the same thing now with Bloomberg. Basically, we have campaign finance corruption. The DNC's right in bed with it. They're right in bed with the campaign money, right in bed with the troublemakers that are screwing everybody blind and taking all that campaign money from them, screwing the public up one side, down the other. And Bloomberg is their last, we knocked off Biden. They knocked off Kamala Harris pretty good. Bloomberg's the other one, that their last-ditch effort to knock Sanders off, and that's probably what's going to happen. The other thing that's wrong with Bloomberg, if you'll notice, he came out and he's talking about these red lines with the banks. Well, and he's saying that, the reason you couldn't, we had the big bank blowout, and it knocked GM off and all that, and he's saying the reason for that had to do with the fact that the laws force you to deal with the black race, and they're all poverty. Well, actually, that's not what happened. If you look into that, he's lying. The thing that caused that blowout, and I don't believe that anymore, the man in the moon. The thing that caused the blowout had to do with the predatory lending. Basically what the banks would do, and they would loan to people that don't have any money, because you loan to a rich guy, they pay it back 10 minutes later, you don't make any interest. But the working poor, they'll have like a $16,000 loan, and it'll take forever to pay it. It goes up to $25,000. Then they pay it a little bit, they get it down to $22,000. Then they can't pay it again, they get laid off, and then it goes back up to $30,000. And this goes on and on over a period of 20, 30 years. That's why they were dealing with them. The other thing was they had teaser rates. They got in there and they knew they couldn't afford it, and they put a real low rate on there, and then they'd jack it up real high. Of course they couldn't pay it, and then they'd go in and get their house. Big money, big money. It was just a rip-off, really. It was a screw job. Well, if Bloomberg isn't smart enough to see that, you don't want... Because, look, they haven't done one thing. They still have that campaign finance corruption. Everything the banks are doing, there's no safeguards against this happening again. And like Robert Reichs pointed out, they've got loopholes so large they can drive their Ferraris through them. What's going to happen if we ever have a deal like this again? The banks are going to do the same damn thing. You think Bloomberg's going to stop it? I bet he isn't. Okay, you don't want Bloomberg right in bed with corruption. All right, okay, so the next thing I was going to talk about was, okay, I guess that's it. I talked about Buttigieg and Bloomberg. Okay, the other thing is discrepancy, how to beat Trump on the economy. Okay, well, the first thing I want to talk about is the discrepancy between what Trump is doing and what he ought to be doing, or what he could be doing. Actually, if you want to get Steyer's, he says, how are we going to beat him on that? Well, the first thing I've noticed is, I don't think Donald Trump really understands, the basic principles of capitalism, which has to do with technological advancement, has to do with competition, technological advancement, competitive prices on the international market, ratio of imports and exports. That's basically how you have a strong economy. You have a high ratio of exports, and he gets part of it with the China trade deal. That was real good there. But there's other things that you could outsmart him on. And one of them is the fact that if you were to bring in, one thing, we don't have electric cars. He hasn't done anything about the campaign finance system. The campaign finance system is what stops the production of electric cars. And all of he's not good with technological advancement. He hasn't done much on technological advancement. But if you were to bring in solar panels to compete with the oil industry, he brought in solar heating, and wind turbines, and electric cars. Those three things, you have more competition. More competition means more technological advancement. And if there's competition, there's going to be incentive for all these companies to advance technologically. And if they can create a solar panel that's better than all the rest of them, all the world will be buying from us, and so we'll be exporting all that technology. And that's what creates jobs. That's what brings wealth into the country. And Trump hasn't done that at all, and he hasn't done anything about the campaign finance system. Another is high-speed rail. Actually, they found out the boondoggle in California. The reason we don't have high-speed rail in this country has to do with the GM lobby. They're the ones that kept it out. And so it's just corruption again. And Trump hasn't done anything about it. The Democrats are more apt to. And if you get high-speed rail, you export that technology. You have a faster train than anyone else. You can sell it, like I say, export it. Okay, let's see. Okay, basically, and what I used to say, I had several other reports where you talk about stagnation, and the campaign finance system. But that's how it works. And he asked Trump to define capitalism. I bet he can't do it. He's going to knock Sanders. Well, Sanders is just a socialist. Yeah, but let's hear your definition of capitalism. What is capitalism? The one thing that drives capitalism, the most important things, and that's how we stayed ahead of Russia, like I said in my other report, you have to have liberal laws where capitalism doesn't work. That means antitrust laws. That means stopping mergers. That means stopping price fixing. That means making sure competition's intact, making sure companies don't drive others bankrupt. Otherwise, the capitalist system doesn't do what it did in the 50s. And Sanders is more apt to do that with his socialism. In a lot of ways. So, he put Sanders social as long as he doesn't call for, the government ownership of hospitals and stuff like that, which would probably be detrimental. But Sanders hasn't laid out what he exactly wants either. But ask Trump to explain what capitalism is. Ask Biden to explain that. Like I used to say, you'd have corruption stops the tornado. It causes stagnation, essentially, which means it hurts everybody all the way from the top to the bottom. And like I say, you have the same electric. You take a blender and you put it in the middle, and the centrifugal force helps you out. And the blender gets more done. It's more efficient when you put it in the middle. And it's the same thing. And you have the same electric motor and the same amount of electricity, but you get more done because of centrifugal force. Same thing with the economy. If you get rid of corruption, you have more, like I say, with the technological advancement, you have incentive for it, you have more money for it, you make more money, you have competitive prices on the international market, so you make more off of that, and you put that money in technological advancement, and then advancement, you have a product no one else has, you sell that on the international market, and you have more money and more incentive and more technological advancement. It's like a cycle, it just keeps advancing. It's like XY equals X cubed or something, X to the fourth, whatever. You have several catalysts, that keep it going. Well, ask Trump to explain that, and I wonder if he can. But anyway, that's what he doesn't understand. He hasn't done anything with technological advancement. Okay, another thing is you had electric cars too. You could get rid of the restrictions on them and make them too small. You could have a luxury car that competed with the Bentley and the Rolls and the Mercedes. And if it was electric, if we dominated the electric car business, we could sell the international market. They'll be buying from us. We get ahead of them. You get ahead of them, and every country will be buying from us. And Trump hasn't brought that out. Okay. And like Neil Young had one that he made a Lincoln Continental, but it burned up. But you could get the bugs out of them, so they don't burn up. You probably even have a business converting them, which would create jobs. And you have more job electric cars, especially if you're importing them to every country in the world. And you could, if you could dominate that, we could beat the Japanese and dominate the auto market with electric cars. That'd be a big, that stuff Trump isn't doing or even considering. Okay, what else? Realistic competitive prices, ratio of imports and exports, whole world equals sell them to the whole world, more jobs, competes with the oil business. Yeah, more competition. Like I say, the more competition you have, usually more technological advancement you have, and the ratio of imports and exports is better. Okay, so net neutrality. That's another thing. Well, Trump is making he's making these trade deals with Mexico. I heard a report last night that they didn't even have any safeguards to keep jobs from going overseas. Well, no one's brought this out, and we need net neutrality, and Sanders would get in there, or Stiers, or whoever, and probably bring out that with net neutrality, you could tell which jobs are going overseas, which ones compete with them, and people quit buying their products so they go overseas. Well, if you renegotiate the trade deal, Sanders claims that they weren't airtight. Jobs are still going overseas. Well, you know that um, um, Harley Davidson went overseas. We know that part of some of Carrier's jobs went overseas. Some of General Motors gone. How many other companies have gone overseas since Trump got in? They won't tell you. If Sanders gets in and put net neutrality in there, we could and we could find out which jobs went overseas. That would and shed a lot of light on it. They probably could go on overseas. And that's well. What does that do? Increases the tax base and balances the budget, which Trump isn't doing. Okay. Okay, let's see. Harley Davidson ought to be a major media. Okay, I said that it hasn't balanced the budget. That's another thing Trump isn't doing. The rich don't pay their fair share of taxes. The hedge fund people got totally out of paying any taxes on the hedge funds. Well, if Sanders gets in there and circumvents the campaign finance system and sheds light on Mitch McConnell how corrupt he is, chances are maybe the rich they'll get through next time, and the rich will be paying their fair share of taxes. Um, In other words, Nixon and Eisenhower both made the rich pay their fair share of taxes. They were both Republicans. And so how much is it to ask for them to pay their fair share when back in the 60s they paid their fair share because you didn't have corruption back then. And like I say, if the Democrats get in, they're going to have to stop corruption. Trump hasn't done anything to stop the campaign finance system. He put two people in the Supreme Court that support corruption, where Sanders vowed to straighten it out. Okay, the other thing. You wonder also if you cut the military, you notice that we support Japan's military, and they say that's why Japan's economy was stronger. But if you had cut the military, the Space Force may be a bad idea because all it does is accelerate the arms race. And like Stephen Hawking said, the fact that that capable of blowing up the Earth with nuclear weapons is proof positive that eventually the Earth will be blown up with nuclear weapons. The only thing that would ever stop it is if something else destroyed the Earth first. So it's a matter of time. So why proliferate the arms race and make it worse with a Space Force? I mean, if you had to have it, if Russia was involved in it, you have to have it. But it seems like that might be something that could be cut, and that would actually, the less you put in the military, the sooner the budget is balanced and the stronger the economy gets. If we have, if there's no taxes, if you have a balanced budget, you don't have taxes or as much, and the economy's stronger for that reason, and you don't have, and the other thing is, there's more money for technological advancement, and maybe Japan put all their money into their auto industry is why they beat us. Where we're putting it all in the military. They don't explain that in political science, but I've always heard that. Okay, the other thing that Buttegieg doesn't get, where he's causing trouble, you go to the AMA and get those costs down. Well, the insurance costs are too high. The ambulance costs are too high. $3,000 for an ambulance to go to Kearney to Denver. Tort reform, we need that. The malpractice suits are unrealistically high. They need brought down. The campaign finance system stops it. Stops any Congress from acting on it. And that would get your insurance costs down. We need to open doors to med school, let more doctors, let more people into med school. They close the doors to them, so they won't let anyone in. That raise the doctors, make them $4 million a year. What does that do? That raises costs. And people there aren't as many jobs, and you lose your tax base. Pharmaceutical industry, non-traditional treatments, no copyrights. Get rid of the copyrights on drugs. Get more access to Canadian drugs. More technological advancement. We need, you can't, and Trump hasn't said anything about that. He hasn't done anything about it. No $80 aspirins. The hospital administrators get the cost down there. Get rid of the $80 aspirins. No hospital mergers. That way you don't have layoffs. You have layoffs. You have lower wages. You have the higher prices. You know, the hospital administrator pads his wallet to the detriment of all the customers, to the detriment of technological advancement, the detriment of strength on the international market, the detriment of the tax base, the detriment of the people, you know, the employees, and the insurance industry too. And then the costs are so high that no one can pay them, essentially. So basically, it's like I say, it's a Buttegieg job. And when you get Buttegieg in there, he's not going to do a thing about it. He's going to turn his head and pretend it doesn't exist. And Biden's another one. I don't know what's over their head, but Buttegieg's right in bed with the darn campaign money. Like I say, he's right in the wine cellar with a bunch of trillionaire people that work for the pharmaceutical industry. And you know he does have his heart and soul in fixing the problem if he's taking campaign money from them. It's fairly obvious. So Buttegieg's a big Buttegieg, up one side, down the other. Okay, now, let's see. Well, plus you have people coming from India to our hospitals if they're, you know, and that. Well, and the more money you get from outside on the international market, the more wealth in the country. That's another thing. I guess I've said that already, didn't I? Okay. All right. And ask Buttegieg to explain the capitalist system and how it works. I bet he doesn't get it. Okay, the distribution of wealth is another. No, let's see that's later. Job growth has been steady since 2010. Trump, he exaggerates. Like he'll say that the wage growth has gone up 3%, 5%. Actually, it doesn't mean anything because the value, the dollar is only worth what you can buy with it, and the value of the dollar has gone down more than 3%. So the standard of living has actually gone down since Trump got in office. Not that it's some of the things he's done, it won't, you know, like the China trade deal, but we'll see the fruits from it later, but it'd be quite a while later. And the wages, I mean, the job growth hasn't changed since 2010. It's steady through Obama, steady through Trump. He hasn't improved the standard of living any. And he hasn't changed the distribution of wealth much with the campaign finances. He doesn't do anything about trade union strength. The reason like I say, back in the 58, we made, the average working class person made about $95,000 a year. And the average person on the wealthy part of town made about $190,000, and probably the average was around $120,000. What's the average right now? About $60,000, $30,000 some places. It's not, and to change that, you have to change the distribution of wealth, which means you have to make trade union strength back, get it back. Sanders is doing that. Sanders and Biden too. Biden did bring it out, but I don't think he knows what he's doing. He strikes me that he doesn't. I trust Sanders more than I would Biden, and Trump isn't doing anything with that at all. Like I say, he hasn't. The campaign finance system is what knocked off the trade unions, and he hasn't done anything with that. Okay. What's the other thing? He hasn't. The Clinton boom in 2000, we had a balanced budget, and we aren't back to where we were in the Clinton boom, and that may have something to do with it. And Trump's not balancing the budget. That's the main thing. Even Ross Perot said we need to balance the budget. He wasn't a Democrat. But tax spending is the way to do it. You want to tax the wealthy and then eliminate corporate welfare and other, like the military and several other things. Like Tulsi Gabbard said, get out of those wars, and you'd probably be more apt to balance the budget. Okay, well anyway, that's my report. You know that if Bill or Tom Steyer said that is the economy stupid, it seems like that's, and they think Trump is so smart. You know, I'm hoping that maybe I outsmarted him here someplace. Anyway, thanks for watching.